first on the agenda is Who Do You Think You Are? So you did, of course, watch it live and direct last night, Ellie.
I did, yeah. I sat with it on with my iPad and my headphones, and do you know what? It's always so reassuring to hear the theme tune again. I don't know why the theme tune just gives me goosebumps. Every time I watch an episode, and it's just so nice to see it on TV again because it's not been on in a while, and it's their 21st series, but their 20th anniversary, I think. So it's been going for something like that. It's incredible. Like, it's one of my favorite genealogy shows, and I found Vicky McClure to be a really compelling guest to be on it. I think she's fantastic. I think she's a great actor, and she's done so much work with. Is it the Dementia Choir? Am I remembering that correctly?
Grandma dementia, was it? And then she,
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
and exactly what Linda's just said about it being VJ Day, actually, because obviously it was VJ Day yesterday, and half of the episode was concerned with her great grandfather, who was a prisoner of war, Japanese prisoner of war in Taiwan, and yeah, it was just, I thought it was an excellent choice by the BBC to schedule that on VJ Day. I thought it was very poignant. I thought it was very respectfully done. It was, of course, very, very, very emotional. And I don't know about you, Liam, but towards the end of the episode, I was like progressively tearing up, like I'm there sniffling with my tissue. And then by the end, I'm full on sobbing. It was heartbreaking.
No, this is my beef with Who Do You Think You Are? That it always starts off like quite fun, and they go and visit their family, and you learn about the person and talk about what they're getting into, and you kind of get into this false sense of security, and then you just get that sort of always leads up to this kind of gut punch moment where, like you say, you're there and Vicky's getting emotional, you're getting emotional watching it, and like I say, kind of 21 seasons, and I still get lulled into this false sense of security. Obviously, there are nice stories that come out of it as well, but those ones, I mean, I should have known with the theme that it wasn't going to be a happy ending necessarily for the individual involved. But yeah, like I say, a really good episode, and like I say, being on VJ8 as well, just a really nice way to kick off the season as well. And yeah, I think it kind of just, even just watching her chatting at the start and speaking to her family and stuff, I think it kind of just relives the kind of, to be cheesy for a second, the magic of family history in a sense, and just having the conversations with her family, even things her saying about her grand dying just what was probably a couple of months before she was filming that episode and stuff like that. I think it does kind of, yeah, it just kind of reaffirms how special stuff like this really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll if we can stay on Harry Millership for a second, the great grandfather who was a prisoner of war, and then we can move on to maybe it's slightly less depressing. The other half of the episode. But for me, it was. I mean, I don't have a prisoner of war relative or ancestor, thank goodness. But I know many people who do, and it's a very hard topic to discuss. But I feel like we shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't shy away from history that's just because it's difficult, just because it's upsetting. And it reminded me that, I mean, I've spoken about I've got his photo here actually. I've spoken about my grandfather before. So I never met him. He died in 1960. So my father was 2 years old. And he served in the Second World War in the 8th Army as a desert rat. And it's made, like, watching the episode last night made me realize just like how close World War II actually is. Like, my grandma on my other side, like, she was a year old when World War II started. And I've sort of inspired even more now to go and find my grandfather's service records to apply to the Ministry of Defence to have those, because like I know what regiment he served in. I know roughly like where he went. But I want some more detail, basically. So yeah, I'm inspired basically, and I think that's why shows like Who Do You Think You Are so good. I don't know why I'm holding my sort of comfort pen while I'm talking, by the way.
I'm doing the very same. I've got mine in
So
my
you're
hands.
holding a
Yeah, I'm always fiddling with something in my hands when I'm doing this.
But yeah, so like I mean, that's why shows like this are so important, because they can, if you've not looked at your family tree yet, they can really inspire you to take that first step, I think. Yeah, very, very poignant indeed.
Yeah, I think like what you say as well, like with your grandfather having never met him as well, I think that was all like again kind of the how special family history is, but seeing how upset Vicky was when she was over there, and she said herself that like she doesn't know why she's upset, she's never met the man before, but it's just that kind of like you say, that connection that you feel with someone, especially her being in the place and having that photograph like you do.
Well, do you remember My Grandparents' War that was on Channel 4
Oh yeah.
a while back? There was an episode, I can't remember whose episode it was, but they went to Italy and they were talking about the Allied invasion of Sicily and Italy, I think. And I think my grandfather was there, like, because the Eighth Army moved from like North Africa and then they went to Italy. And I've even got extracts of his war diary that says that he was in Italy. And when they were talking about it in My Grandparents' War, I kept like seeing locations that were familiar to me from the war diary, and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, like whoever this celebrity was, I can't remember, it's absolutely dropped out of my head, but that celebrity is now walking the area that my grandfather would have done, and that was like that was a bit of a moment. Like, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that.
Do you think that like obviously the question of the week this week is where would you like to go, and you do think that like seeing her just being there, and we wouldn't have access to the mines that she went down or anything like that, and just yeah, it's just special having those trips and going to those places where your ancestors are from.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, what she said about how hard it was to do it on her own as well. Like, I totally get that, and
oh
that
yeah.
must have been. I mean, it's all very well and good going somewhere positive that's associated with your ancestor, but to to go where she went on her own, and yeah, that must have been really, 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 really hard.
Yeah, it's like she said herself as well that she felt bad for complaining about being on her own, thinking about what obviously her grandfather had gone through in the same location. But yeah, like I said, to be down that mine with a camera crew you probably met 24 hours ago and an expert that you met half an hour ago, just yeah, you would kind of need that somebody
Poor
else there to,
work.
yeah.
And before we move on from Harry Millership, actually, we actually found they didn't show this particular one on the show, but this is the prisoner of war record for Harry that we have on Findmypast. And as you can see, most of it is in Japanese, but you can see his name, you can see his father and his mother's name, you can see his address, which is for his wife. You can see his regiment, his service number, and you can also see that it's been crossed out with an X, which I assume mean that he's died. And then on the second page, which I only saw this but 20 minutes ago, the second page says how he died as well, which is mentioned on the show.
I know. Yeah, like I say, it's obviously this is a record that they didn't show, but seeing the records, the original Japanese records that she was holding, and seeing the census records and things, and from an entirely selfish point of view, it is always nice when you see our copy of the 1939 register or the 1921 census, and her, I think it was, like I say, 21 seasons, and it happens a lot, but seeing Vicky McClure sit down on her laptop and open up the 1921 search page just felt really special as well. Like it
Do
was
you know
just a
what?
really cool moment.
I'm pretty sure this is the first time that the 1921 census has actually featured on Who Do You Think You Are? Because from memory, the last series, because of when it was filmed, they couldn't use it yet. So this is
Yeah.
the first one they've been able to do it with, and it was just really nice to see. Like, we at Findmypast, we put in 3 years worth of work to digitize that and to make sure that people can search it from wherever you are with an internet connection, basically. And it was really nice. I mean, I don't know if you felt the same, Liam, as somebody who works for Findmypast and who has for several years, to see it finally appear on like our favorite genealogy show, Who Do You Think You Are, was so nice.
Yeah, I think especially because I was obviously still in customer service when the 1921 census came out. So a lot of my time from January onwards was spent speaking to customers and hearing their success stories of it. But like you say, seeing it was almost like a tangible culmination of all that work, seeing someone just, like you say, who do you think you are, just log on, do a quick search and find what they were looking for. Even though I've had that conversation probably thousands of times with customers on phones and emails and different things, but just seeing that physical was just really nice.
I feel that's exactly the point, right? And I think that's why the 1921 census was used so early on in the episode. Because if you have family who were living in England and Wales at that time, and I would also, probably put the 1921 census for Scotland in that bracket as well, which is available on the National Records for Scotland website, at Scotland's People even, it's that perfect starting point because it will very likely have a grandparent of yours, for example, even a parent, for example, and you very likely know who these people are. You know their full names, you know when they were born, you know their dates of birth, but you might not know much else. So having that as your starting point, doing exactly what Vicky McClure did, opening it up, popping the name into the search. Yes, okay, you might have to tweak your search a little bit to make sure you find the right one, but then suddenly you've got that snapshot of that family, your family, just after the First World War, before the Second World War, and you might have a whole family group together. You can learn so much about their living conditions and occupations. And, at this time, there were so many people out of work, some people were on strike. And yeah, I just think it's the perfect way to start.
Yeah, like I say, I think it was really apt. It was the kind of jumping off point for the episode because research wise, nowadays it's a perfect jumping off point for your research as well. Like you say, obviously there's a 1939 register, but depending on your age, you probably know who's in, you probably know roughly what to expect in the 1939 register. Whereas that almost 20-year difference in 1921 interwar period is just, it's an interesting time of history, and it's really interesting, like you say, the detail it's on the 1921 census as well, with children and different things, parents being alive and all these kind of things. Is just, yeah, it makes it, yeah, like I say, it was a perfect start to the episode, and hopefully a perfect start to a lot of people research as well.
Yeah, because I found my both of my paternal grandparents before they got married to each other, obviously. And then on the other side, my grandparents weren't born yet, so it's like great grandparents. And I think they were already married at that point. No, they weren't already married either. So you see them as children as well. And for one of them, for my great grandfather Ralph, he wasn't living where I thought he'd be living. I thought he might be living with his family as a young man, or at least on his own. He was actually living with his future wife, her siblings, and her parents. And because I got the places of work, so he was working with his future father-in-law. That's how they met. That's
Nice.
how my great grandparents met, through um, through the workplace, basically. And that I never knew that before I looked at that record.
Yeah, things like that. You say that extra detail, and then obviously looking back, you can piece the story together and think he was working there. That was this guy's business, and then he married this one, and that was his daughter. And yeah. And speaking of grandparents meeting each other, Victoria has a comment for you as well. It was Gary Lineker was in Monte Cassino, and yeah, Victoria's mentioned before as well that hers was also in Italy. So maybe a friends, associates, and neighbours connection between the two of you after all.
But this is exactly why I want to get the service records for my grandfather, because then, Victoria, if you've got your grandfather's service record, maybe we can compare. And oh, I've got goosebumps. This is why family history is just, it's one of the reasons it's so special, is because you can find connections like this. And like I do have sort of this weird idea in my head that sometimes, like, things cross over again in the future for a reason. Like people cross each other's paths, and who knows, Victoria, maybe we have crossed paths for a reason. I just, yeah, we'll see. Wait until I get the records.
We'll say that's a job for you both this weekend, is to order some service records, and then we can reconvene at a later point.
Actually, do you know what is even more sweet about this? Is that my great grandfather and his future wife's father both worked for Cadbury.
Hey, see what you did there.
Yeah, you see what I did there. Yeah, they worked for a Cadbury factory in Staffordshire. So there you go.
New format, same old dad jokes.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say about the episode as well is there was a part where I feel like I'm trying not to spoil it, but I feel like we're spoiling it anyway. I'm so sorry for everybody. It's really hard to talk about it vaguely. But the first part was her focusing on her grandmother, and the fact that they started like looking at the 1921 census and like cross-referencing some dates for the great grandfather's. He worked as a steward on a steamship, and they worked out that he was away for like a year and a bit in which her grandmother was conceived. So I feel like there's a really important lesson for all of us. So whether that's anybody who is just starting out in their family history, so if you're watching and you're just starting out, or if you're a seasoned expert, as I know many of you watching are, check dates, like compare dates, because if they hadn't done that with these set of records around Vicky McClure's grandmother and then who they thought was the great grandfather, they wouldn't have figured that out. So pay attention to the detail, basically.
Yeah, that was one thing I think from a research perspective. Like obviously you don't see much of the behind the scenes and the months of work that goes into the research, but like say just from a kind of research inspiration perspective, seeing that puzzle come together with the 1921 census, his occupation, the Lloyd's list as to where the ship was and stuff like that, I think just seeing all those pieces come together just made it really cool from a research perspective as well. And even though it might not be applicable to any research I'm doing at the moment, I always think when you're watching Who Do You Think You Are, you pick up these little things and you think, that person's mission from that census record that I found, maybe they were on the ship and that ship's on Lloyd's list and I can tell where in the world he was when that census was taken, or whatever it might be. I think, yeah, from a research perspective, seeing the puzzle come together, like I say, you don't see God bless the person who had to put those pieces together when they were doing the research for the show, but seeing it come together like that is always really cool.
I feel like the researchers behind that show are like huge unsung heroes. So if any of you are watching, we like you a lot and we appreciate what you do. So thank you so much.
And come and speak to us as well if you are watching. We'd love to. That'd be a cool interview to do on here as well. I would love to hear more, because when I used to watch Who Do You Think You Are pre-Findmypast, it was just a nice little show. But now working here, it's a totally different show now, because like you say, I'm thinking so much more about what they're not showing than as much as they are showing, kind of thing. Like you say, the work that goes into it. So yeah, that must be a lot of fun, although I'm sure they are pulling their hair out at some points as well throughout that as well. But we're talking about them using we're talking about them using Findmypast on screen. Can you imagine watching Who Do You Think You Are, having been the one that did the research to take her to these places and everything? Now that would be even cooler as well. And we've got maybe another friend, associate and neighbour connection for you as well. Darren's great nan and cousins worked at Cadbury as well.
Oh my goodness, Darren. I really need to know where. Because yeah, as I said, my great grandfather worked at the factory in Staffordshire, and he was a chemist. So he would go in and like test the quality of the milk that was brought in before it was then made into the chocolate itself. So that was his job. And I think later, he I don't know, he must have changed from being like a chemist to working like more manual labor. So he was like unloading books and things like that. But yeah, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Need to start building out a fan family tree for everyone in the comments that is connected, and we all these, like you say, people cross over in strange ways, and yeah, a lot of strange coincidences there. But yeah, really, really good episode. Really enjoyed it. I did not watch it last night. I'll hold my hands up. I forgot to watch it live, so I watched it on my lunch hour today. Dedicated my lunch hour to watching it, and no regrets. It was really good to see, and yeah, it is already available on iPlayer as well. I did have a moment of fear thinking it wasn't going to be on iPlayer and I was going to be on here just blagging my way through it, but it was on iPlayer and I spent my lunch hour watching it. And like I say, I would recommend. And next one will be next Thursday, I believe, is
Yeah,
it?
so Paddy McGuinness, I think, is next. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think it's Mel C after that. And because the Family History Show will be fortnightly, you will have 2 episodes to delve into in 2 weeks' time, which will be exciting.
I've definitely spoken about the Spice Girls on a random occasion on here before, so that'll be a nice throwback for us all. I can speak more about the Spice Girls in 2 weeks' time. I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. Set your
Better that than
calendar.
football.
Yeah, see, this is why you being here, you'll steer me clear of the football chat maybe, and we can stick to the Spice Girls instead. That's the options on Fridays lives. There's Spice Girls or football. But that's, so yeah, like I say, we definitely recommend watching that, and some homework for you all and myself included. Make sure you are watching them on Thursdays because we're going to talk about it on Friday. So if you don't want any spoilers, that's what you need to do. It's what I need to do as well. Like I say, I'm part of this as well. We all need to watch it on a Thursday night